Can you hear me? Ni hao is the only Chinese I have, but welcome. And xie xie is the other bit of Chinese I have. But I apologize for not speaking in Chinese, and I know the audience is fairly fluent in English, so thank you very much. As Paolo said, I'm Henry Calvert and the head of networks at the GSMA. I'm also the champion within the GSMA for the 5G Futures community. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background around the 5G community. This is interesting. That doesn't look like the slide I was working on. I think the notes are coming up as well. A little bit of an error there. So the 5G community sort of framework that we look at is we've got three particular areas that we go through. Actually, does it work better like that? Yeah, we've got notes on the screen. My apologies. So the 5G community, future communities, we have a way of actually bringing together the whole industry. The GSMA is renowned for being an operator association, but now, over the last couple of decades, we've seen other industry sectors like device manufacturers, like IoT manufacturers, and also vendors being a critical part of the direction that the GSMA needs to go through as we look at technology standardization, specification, and scaling for economic growth. And we look at this in a couple of different ways. We look at the GSMA we look at there's sort of an activity going on at the moment, which is delayering of the network, which is driven by softwareization. It's been also driven by the cloud infrastructure providers out there. And we have a community that looks at that sort of delayering that's actually going on. And we have the GSMA Open Gateway, which I'll talk about a little bit more, but we also have the open infrastructure community that we talk about in there. On the right-hand side, as you're looking at this, you actually see we have the GSMA industry community, and that's looking at the vertical sort of segments. That's the demand side. What's the fintech industry wanting? What's the transportation industry looking for? What are the digital industries and the aviation industries actually looking for? And then what we see lower down is what we're here to talk about today, which is the 5G Futures community focus. And we've got 5 main key areas that we talk about in the GSMA and we bring together. One, 5G mmWave, then 5G standalone, and then 5G advanced, 5G new calling, and AI for networks, as we see the autonomous networks coming through and working. And this is all in the generational change that we see the service-based architectures coming forward and the cloudification of the network. And at the bottom, we then have the GSMA open infrastructure activities, which is looking at the restructuring of the industry through the supply chain challenges that we see in the marketplace. We see a lot of operators restructuring and moving to tower and fiber co. China is leading the way on active network sharing, as we've seen in the 5G that you've put that progress. And these are valuable economic changes in the industry that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at the overall portfolio. So when we talk to people, we just don't want to talk about one topic. We want to talk about how that one topic is impacting every single activity across the industry. We have community meetings, we have community webinars, and we have communications. And our outreach that we're doing, like at Mobile World Congress Shanghai here, we of course have Mobile World Congress Barcelona, but we also have smaller events called M360, Kigali, and we're going to South Korea later on in the year. So everything that we learn from China here, we'll be talking to the world to actually say there are significant advancements around 5G that's actually happening. You need to actually really take note and consideration of it. Why? Because 5G has been the fastest ever generational technology change. It's phenomenal. It has been led out of China, I have to say, with Northeast Asia actually supporting that. It's phenomenal that we're in just 2023 and we have 228 5G mobile networks that have already been launched into commercial service across 87 markets. We're seeing a new way of actually using mobile connectivity to reach customers through fixed wireless access, providing about 99 networks around the world in about 52 markets. Overall, that's about 243 operators that are providing 5G-based services. And we see the new growth of 5G standalone coming forward at about 130. And we want to see that rapid change coming through the industry as people think about closing down 2G and 3G networks. But hey, we've got over 1 billion 5G connections already. We don't see that in 4G until 7 years into the whole of the introduction of 5G LTE. We've got to actually understand this is a real phenomenal change at a pace we've never seen before. And by 2030, we'll see about 5.3 billion connections, about 54% of the worldwide connections in the marketplace by 2030. That's phenomenal. It's going to be the next platform. 4G is the platform at the moment, but the next platform is coming quicker than we would expect. And there's value coming out of it. And China is actually showing that there is value. There's a lot of 5G consumer connections actually being migrated through. And we're seeing about a 5% growth in ARPU. That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic to see. You can see the turnaround. The swing is 15% there over the last couple of years. And that really brings a lot of hope for this technology platform. But I believe there is more to do. There's more to do because we said 5G was actually unlocking the potential in the enterprise market. And has that actually really happened yet? We see emergence of this in the work. I think if you looked in Hall N3 at the 5G IN sort of zone at the back there, there's lots of companies actually starting to use 5G to enable solutions that they're providing into the enterprise or the ICT or the IT&T market that we actually talk about, which is very interesting. And why is this interesting? We start to do some numbers around capitalizing on cloud. Cloud is driving the productivity out there in everyday life and in enterprises. And we did some work with a consultant called McKinsey that's actually looking, by 2030, about $5 trillion of cloud storage, system integration, application revenue that is going to be created. 5 trillion. That's a huge impact on GDP and what's actually going to happen. But if we stay as operators, as a wholesale-based model, we build products and they will come. It's only going to give us a very slim 10%, if 10%, maybe even 5, 6% of that value as we wholesale this out into the marketplaces. So we have to think differently. Life is a production model at the moment. How do we look at an outside-in approach? How do operators be part of that value chain? And everything we talk about today is the building blocks to be able to be in that production model. And hopefully you'll hear about that. Where we in the GSMA are focusing in the 5G Futures community and the work we're actually doing, these are our priorities for the year. And I'll start sort of at the bottom and come up, is I was talking about the delayering before, the tower and fiber, the supply chain, and the edge compute and storage. They're changes, actual physical changes about what is offered by an operator and how they're doing it. And they're mainly doing it for cost savings and economic growth in the cost savings in that sense. We have this virtualization that's actually coming through, which is providing a level of disaggregation across the marketplace in what we're seeing, and also delayering. It's sort of two forces acting as one. As we move from traditional building appliances and plumbing connecting to actually IT-based services, which is very software-driven, DevOps, and the automation that we actually see out of that driven by machine language or AI. But that's enabling us to actually look at different architectures within the network. 5G SA, this could be akin to actually be called network slicing. How do we provide quality and demand right the way through the network on a particular service type? 5G Advanced, we believe there's about 30% improvement in revenue that you can actually get in the next 5 years of a generational change. So this is 5.5G, or 5G Advanced, as we like to actually call it. And it gives better capabilities in the network, like millimeter wave positioning, passive NFC or IoT devices, and also what we think is going to be one of the biggest drivers is the uplink. But all those capabilities in that design will need a bigger highway to run on. So 5G millimeter wave is critical to actually be able to cater for the demand and provide the capacity through spectrum and ways of doing that and techniques to get 5G millimeter wave. All of this, the GSMA has launched an initiative called Open Gateway. And Open Gateway is meant to be talking the language of the cloud infrastructure players and developers. So expose our network capabilities so they can actually create value through APIs. And those APIs need to be standardized, they need to be common, so every developer can connect to networks and use either understand what the device status or the device location or whether the number from the device is legitimate. Going on to more sophisticated techniques for a developer like edge compute. Where's the nearest store and compute to the customer, the endpoint that I'm trying to get to? And can I provide that extra quality on demand to that customer through an API, which will look like network slicing in the future, won't it? In how it's actually coming. So how do we expose the network capabilities in the language that developers and enterprises actually understand, which is software code? Rather than GSMA writing documents that can be interpreted differently, we're writing code in software repositories. And we're delivering that out, and people are connecting much faster to the enterprises, and we hope that will actually uplift some of that 5G enterprise value that in the first slide we could be missing. So welcome to this 5G Future Summit. Hopefully the debates will be really interesting and you'll take information away. There's obviously a QR code that will drive you to our website that all the information I've discussed will be provided. So thank you very much and enjoy yourselves.